Hi, I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream, live on Al Jazeera and YouTube. Today, what does the future hold for ethnic Russian non-citizens of the Baltic states amid tensions with Moscow? The presidents of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are preparing for a key summit with U.S. President Donald Trump in April. And the country's tense relations with neighboring Russia will be high on the agenda. The countries are Western-facing EU and NATO members, but Estonia and Latvia are still wrestling with how best to integrate non-citizens, most of whom are ethnic Russians. Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia declared independence when the Soviet Union dissolved in the early 1990s. Many ethnic Russians who had settled in the Baltic states during the Soviet era remained. Lithuania granted citizenship to all residents, but Latvia and Estonia require non-nationals to pass language and history tests to be granted citizenship. Well, today, about 12% of Latvia's population and 6% of Estonia's population are non-citizens. The vast majority are ethnic Russian. So here in our studio to discuss this, Inga Springe is an award-winning investigative journalist and broadcaster and is one of the two founders of the Baltic Center for Investigative Journalism. From the Latvian capital, Riga, we're joined by Olga Prochevska, an educator and entrepreneur. And from Brussels, we have Yana Toom, an Estonian politician and member of the European Parliament. Welcome to the stream, all of you. Now, I want to start with the view from Estonia to give our viewers a look at how some people became non-citizens in the Baltic states after the fall of the Soviet Union. Alexander Zuckerman is a journalist in the Estonian capital, Tallinn, and he lays it out for us here.
When Estonia gained its independence in 1991, there was a possibility to those people who were ethnic Estonians to get Estonian citizenship automatically. But some people were Russians. We had 300,000 Russian-speaking people in Estonia at that time. So many of them decided to get Estonian citizenship, to pass examinations and to get Estonian passports. Some of them thought that it's better for them to have a Russian passport, so they got Russian citizenship. But for the rest who couldn't pass an exam, there was another possibility to get this temporary document, so-called Great or Alliance passport. With this passport they can live in Estonia, but they cannot be elected to the parliament, they cannot participate in the elections to the parliament, they can only vote for the municipal government. Now we have 85,000 of these people, which is quite strange for Estonia, which is a member of European community.
Yana, you saw the report there. What is daily life like for these non-citizens who hold this gray passport?
First, let me make a little clarification.
Sure.
We have at the moment 32% of Russian speakers, and half of them are Russian citizens. Mm-hmm. Half of them are Russian citizens, almost half, and half of them are non-citizens.
Okay.
And we have almost 9% of Russian citizens and 6% of non-citizens. So if we're speaking in terms of integration, of belonging to European Union and so on and so forth, we have to remember these things. And as you know, a few days ago there were elections of President of Russia, and 22,000 of Estonian living Russian citizens voted on these elections, and we have 94% those who voted Vladimir Putin. Which is another part of this puzzle, so to say. But if we're speaking about non-citizens, they have no political rights. They can vote only in local elections. They cannot be candidates or be elected or vote in European Parliament elections and elections of national parliament. They cannot exercise right to free movement. For instance, if you are non-citizens you are going to work to Finland, you have to ask for permission to work after 19 days. They cannot exercise the right to free movement of services. Mm-hmm. If you move with your company to another member state, you can move your company, but you cannot move yourself, which is kind of absurd. And they have a lot of other small or big restrictions, like they cannot work in certain positions, like, I don't know, policemen or firemen, for instance. Mm. And in general, Russian-speaking population have a lot of problems, unfortunately, in Estonia.
We know, Inga, that there are similar restrictions in Latvia, but I wanted to bring in this view via Twitter. Madare says, I agree that this topic has to be talked about, but I completely disagree with framing this as non-citizens are the victims narrative. That gives a very crippled picture of how things actually are. She goes on to say, my personal opinion, Russian non-citizens are not so much excluded as they have excluded themselves by not wanting to become citizens and by not learning and speaking the Latvian language. It's a choice. That being said, civic society in Latvia could be more proactive to make conscious steps towards including non-citizens more by reaching out and listening to their opinion. Do you think that Madara here has a point? What is the situation?
I totally agree with this tweet because I think that there are kind of two sides. One side is that when politicians are bringing up this issue, and also foreign media, maybe also like you are kind of exploring this issue also kind of locally, I don't see it so much as an issue. I can hear that now Russians would say, I am Latvian, so I don't understand because I am Latvian. But I think, yes, like this lady in Twitter is saying, Russians in Estonia and also Russians in Latvia, they have rights. If you want to have all the same rights like citizens, you have right, you can go and pass exam and have all these things what Yana Tom was now saying, what's kind of impossible to do for them now. But then there's the question why they don't go and don't do this. And it's kind of this historical perspective, why also, where will be my answer, where I think it's kind of unresolvable issue about integration, because 50 years Latvia were, and also Estonia, we were under occupation by Russia. It was called Soviet Union. So Latvians, we are like now 1.9 million people, still in families, we know family members who were deported to Siberia. There is still like this offense, this sad feeling. So we feel like Latvians feel like we are under threat. And we still see these Russian people here as occupiers, not so much as liberators. Meanwhile, Russian people there are generations who have been born in Latvia, and they feel like they are Latvia's people, and they feel they're kind of offended. Many people, if you will ask why you don't go and don't pass these exams, they would say, it's a question of principle. I was born here, I came here, I liberated this country, I built this country like during Soviet Union times, and now you ask me to go and pass this exam. So on the citizen level, like on people level, I don't see that there is kind of a big issue. There are two nations, we feel totally different, but I think we live quite well. But then there are politicians, like, I'm sorry, Yana Tom, and also in Latvia we have the same, Tatjana Ždana, who was also a long-time parliament member in Europe Union Parliament, and they bring it up as political issue, and I think this is where a lot of problems
So I want to give Yana the chance to respond to that. Yana?
You know, frankly speaking, I'm tired to respond to that kind of things. It's not interesting. I'm sorry to say. I was elected to European Parliament by Estonian citizens. For, as I said before, non-citizens cannot vote in European Parliament elections, which means that this is an issue. And for me, it is a very strong signal that Russian speakers of Estonia and also of Latvia are waiting that Brussels can solve their problems. Brussels, not Moscow. And there is only two alternatives, Brussels or Moscow. If we do not do it, somebody else will help us. And
but then,
in fact,
this is
I would
definitely not what we want.
But then, Yana Tom, please, can you answer the question? Why is these people, they have rights to go and pass the exam. Why they don't do it? They can get citizenship
Inga,
and get all the rights.
I can answer you that.
Okay,
Inga, I can
Olga,
answer
go
you
ahead.
that.
Sorry, question was to me.
Yeah.
So since we haven't heard Olga, I will get your view, Yana, but I want to hear what Olga has to say. Olga, go ahead.
Okay, this is a very neoliberal approach, like everybody can become a millionaire, why they all don't go and do this. The problem is that there are hard feelings on both sides, so Latvians feel offended by Russians historically, but Russians feel offended by Latvians as well, unfortunately. For example, by the fact that during the liberation from Soviet Union, a promise was made by a major political force that no one would be left behind, all would be citizens, everyone will have the same rights, and then this promise was broken. And this lays very, very hard on Russian community. And I, as someone who has received her citizenship automatically by birth, I can quite understand somebody who is not willing to go through a certain procedure that also requires investment from a person's side. Like, for example, you have to pass a language test, but no free courses, state-funded courses were provided all this time. So if you are somebody working on 2 jobs, like trying to make a living, you'd probably not have money to go to courses and to pass the exam in this very independent fashion.
Jana?
Yes, I absolutely agree. And there is another thing. I don't know about Latvian. I mean, language. I'm not a linguist. But I know about Estonian. This is really, really complicated language. And it's absolutely, there is absolutely nothing common with Russian language. And nowadays, if you want to have Estonian citizenship, you have to proceed exam on B1. B1 is enough to study at the university in any country. I mean, if I want to went to study at, I don't know, to Italy, to Great Britain, to Italy, to whatever, I have to know this language on B1. It's not easy. And for some people who are living, for instance, in Ida-Virumaa County in Estonia, where we have in Narva city 97% of Russian speakers, there is nobody to speak Estonian with. And there is no, Olga was absolutely right, there is no courses which will be free of charge. And it lasted for 25 years. The only thing which we had to do, we have to teach our people to speak Estonian, but we failed to do so in more than 25 years.
So yeah,
this is
so
the
Jana
job
and
which
Olga,
was not
I hear
done
what
by
you're
state.
saying about how the difficulty it is to learn a new language. I want to give the view of what it's like to take the test, the citizenship test as well. We sent a team to the streets of Tallinn, Estonia, to hear what residents think about this citizenship issue, and we heard a range of opinions. We picked out just 2 for you. Have a look.
My personal experience is that passing the exam is quite possible. If you want to do it, you have to make an effort. But if the requirements to pass the exam were reasonably lower, the number of people aiming to pass the exam and get citizenship would be higher.
I think they have to provide citizenship to anyone who wants it. Then the problems would be over. Everyone would just be a citizen. I was born here, I was raised here. If there were citizenship without the need for exams, there would be nothing bad in it.
So, Inga, those are 2 varying views there. And the last person said that he thinks that everyone should be given that citizenship. Of course, that is something that both Latvian and Estonian politicians do not agree with. Can you explain that reasoning?
Partly answer why none of the country's politicians would accept is what Jan Tom mentioned at the beginning. 92% of people in Estonia who went to participate in Russian elections voted for Vladimir Putin. As you know from foreign policy.
More than in Chechnya.
I'm sorry? Even more than in Chechnya. It's really a joke for us. I'm sorry. But
those are not non-citizens. Those are Russian citizens.
Yeah, but this gentleman was saying to giving over them like citizenship automatically. I think this would be used as reason from more politicians why are we not going to go, because they will measure loyalty of these people by whom they are voting. They support Vladimir Putin. We in Latvia and also I assume in Estonia and Lithuania, we see Russia as a threat. Vladimir Putin is part of Russia, like Kremlin. I would say Russian people is like in general, but Kremlin is a threat. So this is one of the things. So what Latvians would say also from this, what Jana Tom raised the issue about the difficulty of the test. I also have heard this quite many times from people when I'm doing my research or stories, like it's so complicated language. Also Latvian, there is this old lady and she now should learn Latvian. But we've been independent for 25 years. There was, I assume, quite enough time. My mom went to work in Norway as a house cleaner. She learned Norwegian when she was 50 years old. I don't buy it as an argument, but where I agree with Olga, and what I observed that there is this kind of attitude which comes from Latvians, which makes Russian speakers feel offended. Because as I said at the beginning, many of these people have been born in Latvia, and now with like nationalistic politicians are saying, go home, you are occupants, where they should go. Latvia is their home. And this is maybe not so much even about policies, what we should give money for Russian dance or song festivals, which has always been about integration programs, as just to treat them as one of them. They are not like Russians. And I think if I may, just shortly, we were planning to do like research on education and quality in Latvia, and we asked these parents, why you send your kids to Russian schools, like liberal Latvian Russians, not to Latvian schools. They say because we are afraid that our kids will experience these attitudes in Latvian schools. Oh, you are Russians, even like on children level, and they don't want their children to experience this. So I'm not saying that there is no problem, but I disagree with this problem, which is raised like on political issue, which politicians are using on populistic purposes.
Right. And I hear your nuance there. You mentioned something about measuring loyalty, and Olga, I'm going to direct this to you, but we got several people talking about Russia. This is a tweet we got from Palumi, who says many ethnic Russians in the Baltic countries have parents or uncles who served proudly in the Soviet Red Army. Also remember, they still have a cultural connection to Russia and don't want to be part of an anti-Russian military alliance. Russia knows this fact and will use it. So that's one view. But Olga, we also got the view on the other side from a journalist. This is the editor of the Moscow Times, and he says that isn't necessarily true. Have a look.
Very sporadically, the Russian government or the Kremlin's news networks point to the phenomenon of non-citizens in Estonia and Latvia as an example of the European Union's failure to uphold the basic principles of fundamental human rights. Moscow has typically followed those accusations by saying that if the West is unwilling or unable to resolve the issue, then Russia will be required to address it. For many in the West, that's an alarming proposition, precisely because it sounds as familiar as it does to Russia's justification for annexing the Crimean Peninsula in 2014, when it said that Russian speakers were under the threat of prosecution. Feeling disenfranchised by Latvian society does not necessarily mean that those populations are prepared to take up arms for Russia.
So Olga, what do you make of his point? This isn't exactly the same issue that we saw in Ukraine or Crimea.
Yeah, and in fact, there has been research into that. After the annexation of Crimea, there was a huge social survey that was funded by government of Latvia, and the result was that Russians, they want to keep their Russian identity, but they don't want any Russian tongues in Latvia, and they feel quite comfortable with their European lifestyle, and they wouldn't want to swap it for living in Russia, living standard there is there, and I see that it is a huge problem that Russians in Estonia and Latvia are seen only as sort of extension of the Kremlin, and they are denied the agency of their own and the identity of their own. Whereas, in fact, when I go to Moscow, for example, they can immediately tell from my accent that I'm not a Russian, and I use certain words which they don't even use, and they tell me that I dress differently. So, and of course, Russians here, they have no other home as Latvia or Estonia in any case.
Mm-hmm. And I think there will be another problem right now because we will have parliament elections in October. And this Russian issue will be a big topic because now our national parties, the main conservative national parties, they propose that all studies in Russian schools and secondary schools should be only in Latvian language.
So you read my mind, Inga. Take a look at my laptop as you're talking here. This is a headline I pulled up. Latvia's next election date decided, and that is October. And this is the headline that's been circulating. Bill against Russian language in Latvian schools passed in second reading. So go on.
Yeah, and the point is that we already have, like for last year, this policy is that 80% of these classes had to be in Latvian and 20% was in Russian. But now, like national politicians want to change it all. It should be only in Latvian language in state-funded schools. If it's private school, it could be also.
To make little clarification, but they still want to keep segregated school system when Russian kids learn in separate schools, but they only do it in Latvian. But they still they don't merge with Latvian kids.
With teachers who are not native speakers and who is Latvian, that's very questionable.
So
with teachers who are not Latvian speakers but who have been living in Latvia for almost all of their life. And okay, you can say like Miss Tom was saying that in Narva, like majority population are Russians. They don't have practice where to speak. But we have like many Russian schools in Riga, and it's not like a Russianized society. You have opportunity to speak. So there is a question. These teachers had the opportunity to learn proper Latvian to teach these kids. But there is another, again, there is a problem. Maybe there is not such a good quality of Latvian language because again, what we have heard from Russian liberal parents, that the level of Latvian language in these Russian schools are really on a low level.
Sorry.
I'm sorry? I mean these one who are not actively going out in protests, which are organizing you or your compatriot Tatiana Zhdanek.
Okay,
yeah,
it's a good,
who are
good
just who are
definition.
doing in a other way how they are trying to improve quality, not like you, Miss Yom, who are using it as a political issue and using as propaganda tool. And today also,
so Inga, I hear your point there, and you mentioned elections, you mentioned parties
and
using
today
this.
Security police even came out in Latvia and they said that it will be used as propaganda tool from Russia. This, you know, this Russian issue about schools.
So it is a concern for some. Take a look at this tweet here. Carrie Casper says, integration will be possible in Estonia when politicians stop using ethnic tensions to divide the electorate during elections. More efforts are also needed to address segregation in all areas of life and workplace discrimination. So Yana, Inga mentioned elections coming up in Latvia. Someone here is talking about the politicians in Estonia. Do you think that this is being used as a political issue to tear people apart?
Absolutely, it's always used as a political issue. Now we have an idea of a reform party that we have to switch all kindergartens into Estonian language, which is not a bad idea, but the problem is that we just do not have Estonian language teachers. I have 5 children, and my youngest children is studying in 5th class. He is 12 years old in Russian-speaking school, and I just see mistakes in his school books, which are done by a lady who is teaching Estonian. My Estonian is better than her. This is not normal. This is about equality. This is one thing. The second thing is that you can study this language and you will learn it, but the problem is what would you be able to say after it? During Soviet times, during Soviet occupation, we had 10 years in Russian school and 11 years in Estonian school. Why? For there were so many Russian lessons that they just needed this extra year to learn in a proper way their own language, Estonian language. Now our children do not have this opportunity. And during the time when their Estonian children are learning some fun things like, I don't know, programming, computer, whatever else, our children are learning, I don't know, geography in Estonian when they're 10 years old. It's not easy. And in fact, if we look at PISA tests, you know what is PISA tests? Then we see that Estonians from Estonian school are doing much better than children from Russian schools. And
Yana,
it is not normal.
I hear your point about it not being normal there. I pulled up here because this is something that you are working on, especially for this year. Estonian MEP and 2 Latvian members of the European Parliament reminding European Parliament of the topic of what's called here in this article stateless residents, what some would say are non-citizens. You sent them this reminding them that this is the issue that you're pushing. Where are you with this?
We are waiting. I also have this card here, yes. We're waiting for hearings, for workshop in Petty Committee, which will be held in April. I believe that we will have also hearing in European Parliament in beginning of June. And the problem is for me that we can argue about Estonian or Latvian language, but here in Brussels, if we're speaking about citizens of Europe, we're not speaking about national identity. This is the problem of Latvia and Estonia. We don't have political nation, still don't have political nation. We're speaking about Latvians and non-Latvians, about Estonians and non-Estonians, and this is a problem for us. But here in Brussels, if we speak about citizens of Europe, we're speaking about everybody, about all Europeans.
If I may,
and
I want to give Inga the chance to respond in about 20 seconds. Okay. Inga. Go ahead.
So if I may, I don't think that we will also be talking about political nations because we are Latvia, we are 1.9 million, we are a shrinking country, we are dying out. Data shows that in 2030, almost half of Latvian population will be 50 years and older. There will be less born babies. So for Latvians, it's not only
following this until we get to the point where there might be a resolution. Don't forget to keep following this story with #AJStream. Thanks for joining us.